Attorney General Bonta. Welcome to Scalable.
Thank you for having me.
Have you been to South by before?
I have. This is my third time.
Oh,
great every time.
Wow.
Yeah, super excited.
Well, we're so excited to get a chance to sit down with you. I will be honest, though, we were a little surprised to find you here. I mean, you don't expect the Attorney General of California to be at South by in Austin on a Sunday afternoon. So.
In the 98 degree heat. Luckily, we're in the shade.
I saw what the weather would be like, so I'm like, I have to be there.
So tell us what you're doing here.
I've come the last 3 years to talk usually about some initiative that my office is working on. In the past, we've talked about the attack on diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. For example, this year we're talking about reproductive health care, some of the attacks, the need for men to be important allies and leaders in this space. So that's what brings me here this time. But I'm always excited and honored, privileged to have an opportunity to be here. The dialogue, the discussion, talking about our future and where we go from here as a shared society with a common future is always something I want to be a part of. So that's what I'm here for today.
How do you feel without the convention center? We were walking by, we're like, is that where it was? It's been like totally leveled. It's been an interesting experience.
We learn to be flexible.
Yes,
So we'll adjust and we'll wherever they'll have me, I'll be there.
Yeah, so South by has attracted more and more politicians over the years. California Governor Gavin Newsom is also here. He's doing a live podcast taping with Vivian Chu, who's an amazing personal finance creator. He's arguably been the most visible Democrat on social media. We asked Senator Booker about his social media strategy, which at times, is parodying the president. But I think overall we've seen, Democrats acknowledge they've been behind Republicans when it comes to creator strategies. I think the election was a big, moment for that. And obviously that's, hurt efforts, especially with young men. So what does your creator strategy look like, and how are you, working with creators and thinking about creators?
Well, let me first say I think it's important for Democrats to accept and realize that we have some catching up to do. And I'll say Newsom has done some catching up very quickly in a short period of time. He kicked it into a new gear.
He has a podcast also.
He does. He did. Yeah. He kind of launched it all at once, the podcast, the parroting, the holding up the mirror to Trump. And I think it's been inspiring to folks to see like the fight, the channeling of that kind of energy. And it's also earned him appropriately a lot of new followers and supporters. So my approach is meet people where they're at. And more, they're no longer on sort of legacy media outlets. Local media has been decimated. There's been consolidation of the traditional media outlets, and there's been a democratization of creator work and engagement and news outlets in the creator space. And so we want to meet people where they are. And it's been exciting to see. It's been a positive change. And there's not just sort of 3 major networks anymore. There's hundreds, there's thousands. And so all with different angles and emphases and priorities. And so our goal is to be wherever we can meet the people that want to hear from us and try to make our work accessible, demystify it, kind of talk about how it affects you, your everyday life in everyday terms. And so, we're on the places that you might think that we're on,
including an Asana podcast.
I know, I was kind of proud of that one.
It kind of feels like Asana right now.
Yeah, this is my second Sauna podcast in the last 2 months.
I'm also very impressed because I'm from Finland, which is where saunas originated. So I'd love to hear that you've done a sauna podcast. I'm kind of jealous, actually.
I would like to do a sauna podcast.
Yeah. It's a good platform. That one was Yellow Dot Studios. Esteban Gast was the host and comedian, and he gets people in the sauna to sort of turns up the heat on them literally until they commit to doing more to address the climate. And I was honored to be with him on that. But that was not a place I would maybe be 3 or 4 years ago. It's an important place to be now, an intersection of priorities and commitment to tackling our climate crisis in a fun atmosphere where maybe it's more accessible to more people. So that's the goal. And we post a lot. We try to post high value. We try to listen to what people are interested in. We heard a lot about people being interested in immigration agents breaking the law and how they could be held accountable. ICE agents, for example, and we saw some of the horrific killings that may be murders in Minnesota. And so we wanted to post about that. We talked to a lot of people about scams and things to watch out for that they can protect themselves against in their real lives as affordability becomes the top issue for people to think of. And kind of interestingly, in California, there's a lot of interest in the Paramount Warner Brothers proposed merger.
We're going to ask you about that,
don't worry.
What that means. So, we just try to give high value content. We try to listen. We try to be in as many places and spaces as we can and be accessible. I think sometimes people say, California Attorney General, I'm not really sure how his work impacts my life. And there's 1,000 different ways. And we want to share that with folks.
Are there specific platforms that you're focused on? I mean, obviously, Governor Newsom is very prolific on Twitter, now X, but that's not the only platform that he's using. So are you using TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, other channels?
So we're on Facebook and Instagram. We're on X, Twitter, and TikTok. We're on Blue Sky, Substack.
There's so many.
And YouTube. Those are kind of the main ones.
Yeah.
And we try to post consistently on all of them, have a presence, have engagement, post on high value issues that people care about. But those are kind of the focus right now. And then we're on more and more sort of creator platforms. Yellow Dot Studios is one. Crooked Media is another one. It was on Strict Scrutiny recently, one of their programs. And then we do quite a bit with Midas Touch. They have a legal AF platform, and then they also, with Ben Masilis, I've been with him as well. So we just try to meet people where they're at. There's a lot of eyeballs there, folks who've earned the engagement, and we want to share what we're working on that is consistent with what they're focused on.
So on stage on Friday, I was having a conversation with a creator, and there was one thing that he said that stood out to me, which is that there is this silent handshake between powerful people, including celebrities and politicians, that he brings onto his show, that he's not going to ask them any hard questions. And we've seen other podcasters since then make similar statements, and one of them went so far as to say, to call my work journalism is an insult to journalists. And I'm trying to make people comfortable, and I'm not pushing them the way that a traditional journalist would. So what is your take on that, especially as we're seeing more government officials and politicians turn to creators over traditional journalists?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can have a respectful conversation that's also a hard conversation. You can talk about tough issues. Sometimes that's kind of not something that you want to focus on in a conversation. It is a conversation. It's a dialogue about a space where everyone feels pretty comfortable, but they want to hear from your guests and they want to hear from the hosts. And I think that's completely okay too. Just because there's not sort of hard-hitting questions that, address something that's sensitive doesn't mean it's not an appropriate conversation. I think there's a time and place for all those things. If you're a leader in a space like, the governor or a senator, you should expect those questions to come at some point in some environment from some person, but they don't need to happen every time to legitimize that dialogue at that moment, I don't think. So I just think there's a time and place for it, and it is appropriate to have those questions asked and answered at the right time and place, but sometimes not as well.
And I think, to your point, there's always been a difference between, going on Jimmy Kimmel's show versus going on Caitlin Collins' show on CNN. But I do worry, especially in this era of so much political polarization, also proliferation of fake news, AI-generated content, misinformation, whatever you want to call it, where is the accountability if creators who are behaving like journalists at times aren't asking the tough questions?
Yeah, I think they shouldn't just accept everything at face value.
Right.
I mean, pushback is appropriate. It can be, you can ask a tough question in a respectful way. Caitlin does it all the time. Very well, and points out misinformation and disinformation. I think that's appropriate. Or, you can comment on it later or two and do a fact check on it just to hold folks accountable. There's different ways. It could be in the moment, it could be later. But I think it is appropriate to push back.
If you can't tell, we come from journalism background.
We
We started our media company in October. I worked at CNN as well, and Jasmine went to journalism school and spent a lot of time as an analyst. So we think a lot about that in our work. What do you think is the responsibility of creators in this moment, especially as they are sitting down, with presidential candidates and tech executives? What is their responsibility?
Probably multiple fold. I think one is they can bring to their audience and to their followers access to something that maybe those followers may not have had access to or maybe had interest in, but because their favorite creator is giving them a platform. I've always thought, some people say I'm not interested in politics. I always like to say you might not be interested in politics, but politics is interested in you. What politics does affects everything that you do, the schools you go to, the safety of your streets, the healthcare that you get, the future of our planet, your upward economic mobility. So everyone, they might think they don't care, but it's impacting their lives. And if creators can connect the dots, show how, give them access to a Cory Booker or a Gavin Newsom when they and how they impact their lives. I think that's important. So access is one, but truth is another. Exploration, testing of what the person is saying, asking the tough questions, but also allowing them to share their platform. I think a little bit of a mix, but it's kind of the things you went to journalism school about and pursuing your career. But access is so important because I think creators are providing a connection to certain things that they're for their followers that haven't existed before.
So you think they should be fact checking and making sure that what people are saying on their podcasts like this one is accurate and they're not just there sharing a political message.
Crazy and insane. I believe in pushing back against misinformation, disinformation. I still believe in facts, science, truth, evidence, data. Our national dialogue has moved away from it, dangerously so. Very concerning and worrisome for me. And I think journalists, creators, can bring us back to where we need to be, where we have a right to our own opinions, but we don't have a right to our own facts.
We recently had Senator Cory Booker on our show, and he told us about his efforts to get Senate Democrats more active on social media, and also that he would support a social media ban for people under 16. We've seen other countries from Australia to European countries now move towards that. You led the landmark trials in California against social platforms to harm young people, and you're a supporter of the Kids Online Safety Act. So tell us why.
First, I'll just say about Cory, if he wants his fellow Democrats to be more engaged in social media, he should just say, do what I do.
Well,
he does it pretty well.
Yeah.
I'm sure he said it in a very nice way, knowing Cory, but that's part of probably the...
And he was your classmate.
My law school classmate. I've known him since my early 20s. I was in grad school with him too, right after college, and think the world of him. He is now what he was then, a good person trying to make our world better and fairer and more just and solve problems. And I love that I'm able to be in some spaces with him. I love that he's helping lead this nation in the right direction. I think we need to have the right balance, and I think kids' safety is something we can never take risks with, and should always be aggressive in taking appropriate steps, that are science-based and evidence-based and based on what we're seeing. And we're seeing, unfortunately, a lot of mental health harms to kids on social media. You mentioned some of the lawsuits that we brought. We have a lawsuit against Meta. We have a lawsuit against TikTok. I've had supported legislation that tries to address some of the addictive features that have led to the mental health harms to children. And I think that that's appropriate. And I think that it's actually good for business. Being pro-kid, being pro-consumer does not mean being anti-business. And I think parents would feel better about having their kids online if they knew that steps were being taken to keep their kids safe, and that consumers would feel more comfortable going online if they knew they weren't going to be scammed or gouged or mistreated. So I think it can be good for business, but I think about my work a lot as a dad. I'm a dad of 3 kids. They're online a lot. I want them to be safe. There's a range from 17 to 27 and a 20-year-old in the middle. And so, and they grew up in a new world that I didn't grow up in. More online, and one of my kids faced some really harmful cyberbullying, and I know some of the addictive features can kind of get you looking at your phone all the time instead of interacting with the quote-unquote real world in the wild.
Do you think bans are the answer for teens?
They could be for younger people. I'm open to it, and Australia has been a leader. I think they do things based on evidence and facts.
What age would be right to get on social media?
It would trend younger for the bans. So the older you are, the more I think appropriate to be online. So is it right at 18 or 17 or 16? I don't know what the magic is of one of those numbers, and people have different types of emotional maturity, and there's probably some studies around brain development, how it impacts you being online. But I think Australia is something we really need to think about. I think Cory's not the only one to express support. I think Governor Newsom expressed support as well. I think the California legislature likes to be first and best and thoughtful in our work. I could see that ban be taken up this year in the legislature or maybe next year.
Would that be at the state level?
It would be at the state level. But California drives markets. We're so big, with the 4th largest economy in the world. We're the home of many of these companies. I mean, Meta being one, and Google and others. And so kind of what we do sometimes can lead to that phrase in politics, as California goes, so goes the nation. But you don't want to be too overreaching. You want to be precise and surgical. You want the solution to match the problem. But a ban could match the problem. I'm open to that possibility, but I want to look at the data and the evidence. So as I promote and support creators and social media platforms and homegrown companies, tech companies in California, we also want them and honestly insist that they be safe for children.
Well, I'm a proud Californian, and so I completely agree with you that we are a forerunner in many of these trends. What about AI? Because right now it feels like we're in this moment where we're kind of heading down the same route with AI that we were with social media. And I know California has passed some legislation around, data protection as well as protecting kids on AI chatbots. Do you support federal regulation for AI?
I do, though I'm not super optimistic. I wish I were. I think I'm realistic in not having high expectations. I do continue to hope. I think this should be something that we can agree on, protecting against AI catastrophic risk, protecting against harm to children, making sure chatbots don't have sexually explicit conversations with children, making sure chatbots don't teach you how to kill yourself and then you kill yourself. Those things have happened. Making sure that AI isn't used to create non-consensual sexually explicit images of kids and women like Grok did on X. So that should be bipartisan. Congress should be able to do that. The federal government should be able to provide a floor of protection above which states can do more, is the way I would look at it. I don't think we should be preempted in California from doing more if we think appropriate. I think a floor of protection from the federal government should occur.
But if you're not optimistic about federal regulation, I mean, how effective can any of the state legislation be when they're all piecemeal and disparate? And it's a very confusing framework, I mean, even for us who study the space.
The patchwork is challenging, but it's not new. And if you meet the highest standard, then you're going to meet all the lower standards as well. And so it creates a race to the top. Assuming the regulations regulate up to the point of necessity and then stop, it can really create a ecosystem of safety. And again, California, I think we're different. I hate to brag about California all the time, but I will continue to do so. You know, we drive markets. And if we do something in California, they might just say, California's so big, there's so many users, let's just do it nationwide. No reason for a patchwork. But AI, just to be clear, I support it. I think the upside is limitless. It's going to save lives and cure disease and improve health and make us more efficient, make us more safe, all those good things. But just like any technology, if used in the wrong way, it can create devastating harm to kids, catastrophic harm, discriminatory harm. And so we need to guard and regulate against all that as we capture the upside.
One more question on AI, because it's not just, the concerns about patchwork domestically, but also internationally, because we don't have any global regulations around AI. And you have countries like China that are really, racing and making much more advanced models and products than we are here in the US. How do you think about that?
It's scary. So I think I'm a leader, so I'm with an official position on this issue. So I think having a visceral response is important. Like, how does this affect my kids? How does this affect our essential infrastructure? How does this affect our safety? It's scary that we don't have a sort of safety protocol that all nations have bought into to protect against devastating harm. I think we can get there, but it's usually voluntarily through volunteer commitments. We've seen that in some other collective action issues where the international community has tried to work to address a problem that affects us all, like global climate change, for example. Not everyone is doing the same, not everyone sees it the same, but I think we need to work towards some baselines and some commitments that we can all make to one another. But the fact that we don't have those commitments, and there are some that are racing ahead without appropriate regulation and safeguards and guardrails, is scary.
Could we fall behind, though, in the U.S. if we start adopting more legislation and guardrails and places like China just continue racing ahead without them?
It's possible, but we got to get the right balance.
Yeah.
I think we want to spur innovation. We want to spur responsible innovation, safe innovation. Innovation where you put the world at risk, safety at risk, kids at risk, that's not the kind of innovation that we want. We want it to be thoughtful, we want it to be prudent, we want it to be safe. And I think that's just not controversial. I think if I said, I want exciting innovation in the AI world as long as we don't hurt our kids. Parents, how many of you agree with that? I think everyone raises their hand. That shouldn't be controversial. But just because someone else is doing something where they're taking an unnecessary risk doesn't mean that we should too.
So why is it controversial in your opinion?
Yeah. All sorts of things are controversial that shouldn't be these days.
Exactly.
I think people worry about over-rotation on the regulation, going too far. And maybe having legislators that don't have a full understanding of the technology and having unintended consequences in some of the well-intentioned policy. I think those are not inappropriate worries. And so I think the AI companies should engage with legislators, tell them what the unintended consequences are, help shape the legislation for the better so it does the good thing but not the unintended thing. And I think sometimes the business world, the innovative world, see government as a speed bump that gets in their way, but it is appropriate to have third-party regulation when the stakes are so high, when catastrophic risk is possible, when kids' lives, literally, and their health, mental health, physical health, are at stake. It is appropriate to have the regulation, but we need to be open to those conversations. You can't see AI as the bad guys that we need to stop. We want to harness that upside potential and guard against the downside risk, and that should be the way we look at it.
To pivot a little bit, because we're almost at time, and I want to talk about Paramount and Warner Brothers. So another big theme that we've been thinking a lot about and that we're seeing at South by is the convergence of Hollywood and the creator economy. So you're seeing, Netflix now is signing deals with podcasters, and the lines are really blurring. A YouTuber just had a huge box office hit, Markiplier. You've raised concerns about the Paramount Warner Brothers deal. I mean, do you think that these entertainment platforms, as well as social media, should be broken up? And what do you think it means about kind of how creators make a living?
Competition is good. More and more corporate consolidation, generally not good. And that's not an opinion, that's based on retrospective empirical data, that when there's more corporate consolidation, whatever space it is, let's say it's studios or streamers, then there's higher prices, there's lower wages for workers, there's less competition, less choice, quality goes down. That's bad. We should have free markets with competition where anyone can enter that market and be successful if their product is good, and not just be squeezed out because they're smaller and because someone else has consolidated all the power. And so, when we look at Paramount, Warner Brothers, we're looking at the different markets that can consolidate there. It's studios being consolidated after there's already been studio consolidation in the past, like Disney and Fox. For example, we're seeing the potential of 2 streamers consolidating, Paramount Plus and HBO Max. And also, people worry about news a lot. It's, CBS and CNN.
I'm a CNN alum, so I'm following closely.
There's a lot of concern. And, we've seen what's happened, and we saw Secretary Hegseth's comments like, get this deal done and get Ellison in charge already so we can fix CNN, or whatever his statement was. And so we are appropriately inquisitive, and red flags go up when we see more and more corporate consolidation. And our job is to play our antitrust role, make sure that the laws are being followed, that there's not unlawful anti-competitive conduct. Our goal is to think about the consumers, a competitive market. We like to think about the workers as well that work in these spaces, and make sure we're fair, objective, and firm in our action should we decide to take any. And the federal government has long had a traditional role in this space, and they have retreated from it. They are not engaged. The US DOJ, the FTC, they're picking winners and losers. They're saying this person should merge here, or this entity should acquire this other entity, without looking at the anti-competitive impacts on consumers. And that's our job. If they won't do it, we will. Consumers deserve that we do, that the rule of law deserves that we do, and so we will. And we're the biggest Department of Justice outside the US DOJ in the nation, and this corporate consolidation is really important to us.
So let's look ahead to the midterms, because one of your predecessors, Kamala Harris, she had a really big moment on social media when she announced her presidential run.
All the brat memes.
Yeah, all the brat memes. She also sat down with Alex Cooper for an interview. Obviously, that did not work out in her favor. There's a lot of different reasons why you're not running for president, but you are up for re-election.
I have no announcement to make here. I haven't made one at this point.
What lessons have you taken from Harris's strategy as you're thinking more about your creator strategy, especially ahead of the elections?
I think there's so much power and potency in the creator world, and we need to go there and engage and go wherever platforms will want to welcome us, to have the conversation, to have the dialogue, to hear from the opinions of the creators, and to engage on the issues most important to them, their followers, the American people. And I think it's only increasing the engagement. There's been this incredible democratization, this incredible infusion of talent into the creator space, and the ability to engage with Americans, with constituents, with everyday folks has increased, and we need it. We act at our own peril if we don't. And so I think Vice President Harris really showed an inclination to do that. Newsom, I think, has taken it to another level. Booker is already at another level. And I think it's only going to be increasing with the engagement. For anyone who's an elected official, if you want to be responsible to our bosses, the people who elected us, we need to go where they are, and they are more and more in creator space.
That's a great note to end on. We so appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much
Good to
for
see
joining
you guys.
us.
Honored to be with you.